We're back, baby. Horns up, talking Texas podcast. Fisher DeSopoulos, DJ Nikki Snacks, Credit V, Quan, Cosby. Get your horns up. Those listening on ESPN 102.7. Austin, how's it going? We have Florida. Happy game day. In the college football rankings, before we get into that game, we are officially the number 5 team. Very interesting rankings. I'll just read them out to you guys. Oregon 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3. They're the first SEC team listed. Miami, the U 4, Texas 5, Penn State somehow is 6, Tennessee 7, Indiana 8, BYU 9, Notre Dame 10, Alabama 11, Boise State 12. So 4 SEC schools, 4 Big Ten schools, and then an ACC school. You'll throw, if you want to throw Notre Dame in there, fine. Boise State, and then BYU. So they're heavily leaning SEC. They're heavily leaning Big Ten is what they're showing us in their first release. Q, you always say it. All that matters is being ranked number 1 at the end of the year. So I will say that quote first before we get into any reactions. But what are your guys' initial gut checks? How do you feel about the 5 ranking? How do you feel about the 12-team playoff picture now that it really is coming to a reality?
Man, you know how I feel about it. However, I think we're one of the best 5 teams, so I think it's right. I also know that you can go like that school east of us, and you beat a LSU, and you're on top of the world, leading the SEC, and then you go on the road and get embarrassed, and so you have to play the game. And I think that's where we are. I think we're in a good position with who we have left on the schedule to potentially take care of business and get to a potential SEC championship, or just keep our ranking and go beat a big rivalry at their crib. So I get the pageantry of it. I think it's exactly what college football is, and it's great and it's awesome, and it serves as it just adds to the fun, right? And so I like it, but going back to it, we had the bye week. Hopefully we clean up some stuff, and we have to play better if we're going to take care of business, because I promise you everybody will be gunning for us.
Yeah. And as it stands right now, I mean, breaking down like what the bracket would look like in terms of the college football rankings, they would have projected Oregon to win the Big Ten, Miami to win the ACC, Georgia to win the SEC, and then BYU to win the Big 12. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that leaves us at 6 with Ohio State getting the 5, and then they put Boise State at 12, Indiana at 9, Tennessee at 8, Bama at 11. So we would drop Bama as it stood right now, and then Notre Dame, Penn State. So, I mean, the path, it's not going to be easy no matter what. But we were talking about this on the last show too. Like, there's a lot of different scenarios. There's a lot of doomsday scenarios where like we could all tie with 8 different teams. I read off the scenario, Quan, last show, where it could literally end in an 8-way tie for first place, and Bama and LSU would play in the SEC championship game, which would be insane. I don't think that's going to happen, obviously, but we were just talking about how we could potentially see Georgia again in the rematch for the SEC championship game. And while there are sides to both you wanting to play them and not wanting to play them, I personally believe that if you are the national champion, you have to beat Georgia at some point, because they're not going to just roll over and, maybe you miss them, right? Maybe someone take care of business, but ultimately that's probably the best team in college football. And to get to the national championship, you gotta defeat them. I think they're better than Oregon. I do. Josh,
Well, but doesn't Georgia have Tennessee this week?
They do.
So I think that's the thing. All these scenarios, especially this earlier projections.
They have Ole Miss. Sorry, Q.
No, Ole Miss. You're right. Oh no, they have Ole Miss this week and Tennessee the next week. And so it's like, even Georgia. I feel you. Why you feel like they're one of they are, and I agree. They're one of the best teams, probably in the top 5 in the country. But I mean, again, even last week they didn't look like world beaters. No, their best game this year is against us, and let's be real. Quan did his best damn job to make them look better. And so ultimately that's it's so, I guess that's my point to where we're at now. I think it's cool. I think it's pageantry. and they have to find a way to create it. Back in our day, it was the BCS stuff, and oh man, every time they came out with it, everybody's on at the front of the TV is on pins and needles because it actually mattered like crazy then. But with a 12-team playoff at this point, with these games coming up, and we still, we're tied for first with A&M and the freaking SEC. So there's just so much stuff going on that I do appreciate it because I love college ball. It gives me something to read up on, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to look like it looks on that sheet per the original projections.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's even the format of how they display it when you look it up is it's not just the ranking, but it's also the position in the bracket. So it's we're getting two things. And it's
Yeah.
like we're ranked number 5, but our position and our seed in the bracket is 6.
Ohio State's ranked ahead of us.
Right. I mean, it's all logical as of now, but this is the stretch of the season where things really start to shake out. And, like you mentioned, Georgia still has to play 2 really good football teams who found themselves in the top 7 at certain points. I think Ole Miss was the highest. They were ranked 4th or 5th earlier in the season.
Oh, yeah, they got down to 5.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, Josh, you made that face when Nick said, I still think we said this at the very beginning of the season. We mentioned Oregon, we mentioned Ohio State, we mentioned Texas, and we mentioned Georgia. To me, those teams have the best players and those teams have the highest ceiling, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's how it's going to shake out. And the difference right now between Ohio State, Oregon, and Georgia is that the quarterbacks for Ohio State and Oregon are playing better than the quarterback for Georgia. They were able to beat us and double the points in our matchup at DKR against them, but Carson Beck didn't have a good game. And it was our offensive woes and their defensive successes in the first half that dictated that final score. So there's so many questions that still needs to be answered. And for us, we get to play now a Florida team this upcoming weekend where we're 21.5-point favorites because they have their 3rd string quarterback who transferred from Yale. He was a Yale Bulldog last year, and now he is the starting quarterback for the Florida
I
Gators.
hate that, by the way.
By the way,
I
why
hate
would you
that.
transfer from Yale?
Because I think he grew up in Florida.
He didn't really have an expectation to play. Like, I would probably get that diploma. I get that.
He might be a grad transfer, no?
He might be.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
I'll get that degree.
Yeah, I'm like, bro, no.
Get the degree.
No offense to Florida's education, but it's not Yale. So okay, that makes more sense. That he was a grad transfer, which that turns into I don't hate that because that was a system that's been in place for a long time versus what we see in the portal these days. So kudos to him. But to your point about our defense and the way we play for the most part at home, I like where we're going.
Hold on. Not a grad transfer.
Oh, wow.
He is a redshirt freshman.
Oh my God. He transferred his, you know what?
He grew up in Winter Park, Florida. So
but also maybe he's smarter than we know. Like he got.
Bro, I grew up on Long Island. I didn't transfer to Hofstra. Like,
he's like, hey man, these professors are crazy. They want me to make all A's. I'm getting out of here. I'm going to Florida. I can go. Some people do that. These people are doing that to get into the University of Texas these days. They're like, I'm leaving this school to go to that school because I'll be top 10, top 6% at that school.
Yeah.
So who knows why he did it? But hey, you know what? Now he's playing on a kind of a national stage and playing for the Jordan School of Florida in the cool uniforms against the good old Longhorns. So he looks like a genius now.
Yeah, I mean, and he that's why he went to Yale. I made the face at the Georgia thing because I agree with everything you were saying up to that point, Nick. But I just don't know that Georgia's the number 1 team because of the quarterback play. Like him throwing 3 interceptions has now become a commonplace. They played Florida last week, and if their real quarterback, DJ Lagway, doesn't go out, I'm not saying the Florida Gators beat Georgia in a neutral site game, but it's closer. Like Georgia pulled away after he left that game. And Carson Beck just continuously throws interceptions. So that's why I can't say that they're the number 1 team. They look like the number 1 team.
What do you have, like 11 in the last 4 games?
He's got 4 multi-interception games. Yeah.
I mean, he's lost Matt Barkley level money. Like he has lost like an insane amount of cash.
I mean, I will say, like we talked about this as well, that the quarterbacks are not as good as they were last year. It's a little bit underwhelming in terms of the play in general. Cam Ward's been amazing, but I still don't think that Miami team is better than Georgia. just based off of their defense.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
I still don't think they're there yet. They're exciting. I mean, I really
Yes.
enjoyed watching them, but they're not in the same tier. Oregon, I feel like, is the only one that can maybe give them a run for money because Dylan Gabriel has been great, but I still don't think that Oregon defense is anywhere close to Georgia's defense.
Yeah, I think Ohio State's probably the one that stacks up, or us, quite frankly. Like,
Well,
we're the highest.
when I said like their best team in the country, like they beat us, so like we'd
Yeah,
have to
no, I
beat them
agree.
to earn that title back. That's what I mean.
I was aligned. I'm completely aligned with you that if we're going to be the best, we have to beat the best. Why wouldn't we want to see Georgia in the SEC championship and get the revenge and get the monkey off our back heading into the college football playoffs versus going into the CFP and maybe having to see them as like an at-large bid when they're a lower seed if they don't make it? Like, I think that bodes well and true. I just don't know who the number one team is. And even you say Cam Ward is the top quarterback, he's not Cam Newton. He's not Joe Burrow. He's not RG3. He's not Lamar. Like, he's not one of these. He's really, really good, and he's put up great numbers. But I'm not going into this game, or if we had to play them, being like, damn, we are screwed. Like, we cannot handle this guy. He's really good. He's probably going to be the top pick, but I just don't see him and watching him.
Cam's going to be top pick?
I think Cam Ward will be the top pick, yeah.
In the NFL draft?
Yes.
I'd agree with that.
Him or Dion's kid. Him or Shador. Assuming the Patriots, who are the now number one pick, don't take Travis Hunter or Kelvin Banks, which I would, as a Patriots fan, would, love them to do. But assuming they take the King's ransom that for a team that needs a quarterback, which there are a ton, and they go, I think Cam Ward is safe. He doesn't come up with the potential off the field headache that Shador has, and he's really great. But I just don't view him as like some of these all-time legendary college QBs that we've seen.
I'm about to say, I'm almost pinching myself about to say this. But now that we're in this league, it's just the truth. You think he's great. He's done great. He had a close game at Louisville and all that stuff. What would Cam Ward and the Miami Hurricanes be in our conference? That's what these NFL guys ask, because you think about what the SEC is saying. Like I said, we have the number one defense. Georgia's in the top 5. You have like 4 defenses that are in, potentially the top, certainly in the top 10, and probably another 5 or 6. A&M's defense is really good, and so I just don't think he's seeing those things, those corners, those first, second round, third round corners on a consistent basis, because they're kind of. Florida State, let's be real. They're playing some teams over there. We'll see and not to mention, we'll see what happened when he plays the Clemsons. And I don't think Clemson's great. They got blown out last week too, but they at least have some dudes that I feel like that are gonna get drafted and play in the next level. And so I think he's really good. Let's not get that twisted. But those first halves where he's just okay and then he blows it away in the second half, I do see those same mistakes. And are those, I see guys missing tackle. They miss like 30 tackles on the dude in the pocket. And I played with a guy who I saw little things that made it. Vince was massive. He ran like crazy. To your point about him not being Cam Newton, Cam Ward is not Vince. He's not Cam. Those guys have stature. They have certain ways about them that cause missed tackles. He clearly has a little wiggle to him as well. But if you have, Simmons and those guys rushing him, is he going to still get away like he has and all the above? So I'm just still not. I respect the hell out of Miami, but I almost put them in Florida State's last year's season until I see them play someone that is in a different Power 5 league. I'm just not sure.
It's just very evident.
It's almost even lesser than last year's Florida State team in some respects, because they, for all intents and purposes, dominated the ACC, and Miami had 3 weeks against Virginia Tech, against Cal, and against Louisville, who I watched every single one of those games. If they're playing SEC teams, they have 3 losses on their ledger.
Yeah, that's exactly that's my point.
And I almost think it's not even to Cam Ward's fault, really, because his heroic efforts have put them in a position to actually win those games, along with Restrepo, their wide receiver, who doesn't get talked about enough. He's I know we give Tataroa and McMillan a lot of love at Arizona's wide receiver. To me, Restrepo's the best wide receiver. He's playing the best out of any wide receiver in college
Oh
football.
yeah, he's balling.
Facts.
And so so I think it's not really about Cam Ward. It's about the rest of the team. It's about the defense. It's about their depth. And it will come to play against whoever, whether it's in the ACC championship or it's in the college football playoff, and they will have that test, and we'll see if Cam Ward can rise above
I think
what we
the other
believe
thing-
that team is right now.
I think the other thing to consider about him too, and we've been talking about this, and this is something that Brady had mentioned, where it's like you come into Michigan as the number 7 quarterback, you work your way to 3, you work your way to starter, you get drafted, you sit for a year. Like all these guys that are having success right now, Joe Burrow, Michael Penix just got drafted. Like guys that sit for Jaden Daniels, they sit for a year or they are transferring. Like Cam Ward has played in college. This is his 5th year. So like he'd be ready to roll next year if he gets
fits that
drafted.
timeline. I think that's also why
Fits that timeline perfectly. And I think like he went to Incarnate Word first, right? In San Antonio, small Division 1 AA, I think, right? Like they're not even they're nothing, right? And then he goes to Washington State, then he goes to Miami now. The thing about him going to Incarnate Word is that I was looking it up in high school in West Columbia, Texas. They ran the wing T and he averaged 12 passes a game. Like there was no reason for any college coaches to even look at him and recruit him.
That's so crazy.
It's a product of where you grew up. Like you have no options to, like they allowed the kid to throw the ball 12 times a game. It says he completed 72 out of 124 passes for 1,000 yards. Like, come on. So
Yeah.
I think this kid, has an opportunity to really do something special. He's been able to elevate his game every single season. And this year he's the Heisman favorite and, he's old enough to fit the bill to start in the NFL next year, I feel like.
I have one last question about him, and then we'll get back to our horns.
Yep.
Is he as good as Caleb Williams?
No.
Because that's my point. Caleb Williams gets away or got away like crazy, especially versus us and at USC with some of the shenanigans that we see from Cam Ward, which by the way, it's awesome. It's fun to watch. It's great. Caleb Williams is not getting away with that in the league. Fortunately for Cam, you come a year after that. Now let's be real. To your point, product of your situation, Caleb Williams with the Bears. Who the hell knows how all that looks?
Yeah,
but
we know how it looks.
Well, the Bears is the Bears, but at the same time, the NFL is the NFL. So his special sauce is his ability to scramble and throw on the. Well, guess what? In the league, they're not going to miss tackles like that.
Right.
You're not going to have all that. Caleb Williams, holding the. He literally, I was listening to a commentator. He holds the ball too long. You got to know the system. You got to get rid of it and all the above. And so I only really wanted to talk about because of I guess I just haven't thought about him potentially being a first overall pick. And I was fascinated by that. So no,
they compared the Heisman seasons, I believe, of like the last 4 Heisman quarterbacks that won it up to this point in the season, and he's already outstatting them. He's got more yards, more touchdowns. His interception ratio is down. Like, so in terms of like what he's putting together right now for his senior season for a Heisman candidacy, it's looking better than what Caleb Williams put together. Now that's a different story of whether he is better or what he's not, just based on the eye test and just like what you have at your ability. But I mean, I think he's legit. These guys know I've been really high on him for the last 2 years. Like I thought he was the most talented player in the portal. Like Miami was lucky to have him.
Exactly. But I'll take it back to the SEC. Miami was lucky to have him, but I don't want to discredit anything he's doing. He's been phenomenal.
Oh, for sure.
He's been great, and he's worthy of the first overall pick as the quarterback, in my opinion. But he is the best player in the transfer portal, and he went to the ACC. Now, there were a lot of good slots filled in the SEC as far as quarterback, but not all of them filled in the Big Ten. ACC competition and the rankings reflect it a lot easier than the Big Ten and the SEC. That gap is getting wider. So if you're him and you believe you are the most talented player and you could be the first overall pick, yes, money talks, and the U's got a lot of cash to throw. But why not go to a program where you can be the dominant force in the ACC versus having to go to another program like an Oregon or Ohio State or somewhere in the Big Ten or somewhere in the SEC where you're playing that serious competition. You may not be able to light it up as much as he is lighting it up. So I'm with you, Q. I need to see, and he could easily do it. We could get to the
Absolutely.
college football playoffs, and he could light it up. He could tear everybody apart. He could go on some crazy heroic run, win the Heisman, and then he's the no-brainer first overall pick. And we're talking about him like Joe Burrow. Totally could happen.
But we don't
But
see it because they got to overturn Hail Mary call from Virginia Tech to even be undefeated right now. So I get what we're all saying, and time will tell. Now, again, the dude is so freaking fun to watch. He really is. He throws a really nice ball. He escapes as good as, especially considering who he's playing. So his old line's a little suspect, but he makes the best of it. But I think I will. I'm not doubting him particularly. I'm doubting the Miami Hurricanes holistically. And when they get to crunch time, as we start getting to the end of the season, and he does play the Clemsons of the world. I mean, again, ACC love Mac to death, but they got blown out by James Madison. I mean, it's just not the strongest league this year. And when he gets to potentially the playoff, because I think they have the easiest track there, I'll be the first to get on here and say, man, that dude, they'd be stupid not to take him. I'm just not there yet. It's not a knock on him. I just, when competition gets real, versus who he's played, I'm not sure.
What's history show us, right? I mean, if I think in a lot of ways he's very similar to Caleb, and their special sauce is similar as far as extending plays and then utilizing their arm to find guys after they've already improvised. Caleb wasn't able to go all the way because his team had limitations, right? Johnny Manziel was not able to go all the way because his team had limitations. You mentioned Cam Newton. He's kind of the only one who didn't have the complete team and was able to do it, because Joe Burrow's team was unbelievable. Like, it was ridiculous.
Well, but Cam Newton had a phenomenal defense.
A really good defense. He didn't have the weapons that Burrow had.
No, that's true.
Or Liner. Like, it's not, or VY. Like, it's not the same, right? But yeah, so I just think like
VY had Q.
At a certain point, the cake gets yanked off by a dominant defense when you play them in the playoffs, especially with the extended playoff format. More teams get more opportunities to demonstrate how quality they are on both sides of the ball.
And by the way, my argument is not that he's going to get drafted in the first round. First overall pick is a different level, though. First overall pick, in my opinion. Now, by the way, they get it wrong a lot, like actually more times than not. But you just don't see a lot of mobile quarterbacks, putting it politically correct, as the first overall pick. Guess what? Vince wasn't the first overall pick. What else did that dude have to prove?
Yeah,
at that time.
Well, the Texans were picking first, and they're
hey, call a spade a spade. The Houston Texans had the first overall pick, and they didn't pick Vince. So I think all those things factor in. So is he? So I just, we'll see, and unfortunately, as it gets more real and maybe competition get more stiff and they lose a game, I feel like the NFL is going to look for reasons not to draft him first. It has nothing to do with him. It has to do with the way that system works.
Yeah, and I will say, tailing it back to us feeling maybe it is still a wide open more of a wide open competition for that first quarterback taken than presumed, and where we're ranked and we're coming off a bye. Things are still door wide open outside of the Heisman for a guy like Quinn Ewers and his future. There is a lot on the table for Quinn to play for. And he came back from injury, did not look like he was playing before injury. And now he has a bye week to get right. And we head to a team that's the Florida Gators, who they may not have the offensive firepower to keep up with us or stay in the game or put up points. But again, they turn Beck over defensively, and they're starting to show signs of life defensively. And it's not going to be a game in which they're going to, roll over and die for us. Like, Quinn is going to have to come out and do his absolute best. And I think we saw Quinn in this position last year, and he ended up turning it up at the right time and playing some of his best football down the stretch, not necessarily in the CFP first half of the game, but maybe in the second half of the game. So I think as far as things go for our offense and for Quinn, I think that he's in a position where he can potentially make some money back and get some of his reputation back for the next level. and take a shot to really command this offense properly now that we're assuming he's fully healed after this bye week.
I hear you. There's a couple of factors. So one, you're never fully healed in football after the first play. So, and even going back to the last game, I think he's making business decisions, which I respect. If anybody gets close to him, he's dropping down. So I think he'll survive the rest of the season, and I hope he continues to play like he did. I actually think he played really, really well in Nashville. One thing that did happen, because we're in this country and there was a presidential election, which kudos to being in the country that allows that. He made a political post, and I got a lot of texts from ex-players, ex-teammates, and all that. And they basically said this: we could care less. Nobody cares who you vote for. That's your private, or at least that's your prerogative, right?
No
But
longer private.
in the locker room, you probably, as divisive as they have been these days. And that's unfortunate for our country, to be honest with you. It shouldn't be that ugly. You should be able to speak openly and publicly about all of this because it matters. They it could have an effect on that locker room. Just put it like that. There's no ifs and buts about it. And it's a weird deal, to be honest with you. The president elect, he posted, legendary and all of that. These things mentally in the game that matters, the ultimate team game, they really matter. So that's the only weird piece about it, is the self-awareness to understand you're in a team sport and not everybody feels the same way or grow up the same way or feels, live the same life. I promise you, 99% of the people in that locker room didn't grow up at South Lake. He is it. And so that's the only piece that I hope that doesn't become a distraction. And I'm a little disappointed about only one thing, is that wasn't thought out before it happened. Everybody has a First Amendment right. They want to do all that, but locker rooms are usually run differently, if I'm just being honest. I promise you, I had very close conversations in 2008 about, Obama potentially becoming the president. He actually came to campus. McClain didn't, Hillary didn't. And there was a guy on our team that made a comment about, a coon going into the White House, and Coach Brown kicked that guy off the team real quick. And it prompted a very, very strong emotional conversation between our team, and we went 12-1 and had a heck of a season because of the way we handled it and kept it indoors. Him doing that, I just worry about the effect it can have, because it ain't even about the guys in the locker room. It's their parents, it's their aunts, it's their brothers, it's their uncles. You just don't need that stuff. It's ultimately what I'm saying.
Who led those in 08? I was going to ask about that. I'm glad you shared that story with us, Quan. Who led those locker room talks? Was it Mac that was in the room facilitating the conversation, or more player led?
No, Mac said he's aware. And the captain said, okay, we got it. Let's go in the room. Everybody voiced their emotions, voiced their feelings. Everybody supported regardless. That's the cool thing about locker rooms. It's like, listen, man, we all come from so many different backgrounds, and we love it. It's cool. We celebrate it. But no, there was not a coach in sight, and because that's a smart thing, depending on how heated it can get. But because that's how we handle things back then. And it didn't even get close to that. It was just, again, people giving their 2 cents and respecting one another. But it's bigger than that. It's truly about it even having a fraction of being a distraction.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it per what your goals are. Because again, even for him, now again, I'm sure he's going to be fine. He went to UT, and there's a lot of people who are going to appreciate it and surely take care of him. But at the same time, if something happens where this team get distracted, they don't play like the beauty of what we've seen in this team is they're so close knit, right? And if somehow that foundation is cracked, that affects his draft status as well.
Yeah, 100%.
It's just stuff like that unfortunately has unfolded. I'm all for everything that happened on him getting healthy, and really what the bye week could do for this team. It's just that awareness. And there's a lot of kids on that team, and I'm sure a lot of them have opinions. But him in this position, that kind of lack of self awareness at the moment or empathy, I just hope and pray that it doesn't become a distraction. Everybody moves on because, hell, from my standpoint, I'm just glad to a certain degree some of this is over with and we can move on and watch football. But I'm not in that locker room. And I know back in our days, it probably would have been a conversation.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's maybe different because, first of all, I think it sounds like from your conversations with your former teammates and other people that it just vote who you vote for, but it just didn't seem
Oh, yeah.
necessary to do that. It wasn't like what's like what are you getting out of making a post like that and you're in the position you're in,
No, that's it
right?
in a
Like
nutshell. They don't care
There's
who you
nothing to
vote for.
gain. Yeah.
We're not. I
there's
live in
nothing to
Texas.
gain.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I mean,
And I'm
that's
about as middle of the road as it gets, so I don't over think about that.
Yeah.
It's
I
more about the structure, the perspective of empathy to your brothers that are protecting your you know what. It's
yeah.
more about the overall perspective of what football is and can be, and that's more it.
and
Yeah.
just the acknowledgement that he's the quarterback of the team. The Texas Longhorns are under a microscope in ways that a lot of other universities are not. Our presence in the media is growing, and with that, I'm not saying you. It's also it's a tricky spot to be in with athletes who are dealing with NIL and becoming their own brand in a way that there wasn't as much
A whole nother
emphasis
thing
put
too.
on
Well, and let's
your
be real,
social profile
it's
in
also
2008.
and
You know,
it's also not allowed in the NFL. We know the Bosa situation. We know the Kaepernick situation. That's one on both sides who had different perspectives.
right?
Now, they were treated differently, but they both got fined or lost their job for making those statements. So, in your next job, if you do that, you got to be careful. And so, in the collegiate level, where you're not even remotely, well, I mean, actually, they're getting paid pretty good. It's just the games, in my opinion, mean even more. They lose one more game, they're potentially out of the playoff. They're potentially out of the SEC. So,
Yeah.
and then your college career is potentially over. In the league, you got to boom, strap it up, get a long contract. You do it again next year. Hopefully, you get some pieces. So it's little things like that. And I know that it's just a risky deal.
Yeah.
And I just, like I said, more than anything, I hope it doesn't become more of a deal than it is. And everybody's trying to get to the league, but everybody also has personal lives and a million people hitting them up about it and all the above. And just going back to kind of the text messages I got about it, which none had anything to do with caring who he prefers or vote for. It just had
Right.
to do with, oh man, he did that.
Yeah. It's just there's nothing to gain out of it. Right.
That's it. That
Like
per your team and that nucleus, I'm not
right.
have the conversation amongst your boys in your dorm room.
Sure.
That's cool.
I
All
don't
day
think
with it.
anyone's surprised in the direction he went. He's from Texas and he rocked a mullet
Yeah,
for like
no,
God
No,
knows
no.
how
and he grew
long.
up in
No
South
one
Lake.
is
Like
no one is
you
shocked,
got to
but
be an
it's
absolute fool to think that he didn't lean that way. But what is gained by that post in a time where everything's kind of overly emotional and
Yeah,
Yeah.
extra?
yeah, I mean
you don't want to
it's
create smoke.
rubbing salt in the wound, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like it's
Yeah,
an unneeded
some people could take it that way. You're
distraction.
exactly right.
We're in the midst of a playoff hunt right now, and you don't want any distractions whatsoever, no matter what it is. And so for that, to be out there, I mean, obviously one of the most heated debates, in presidential history, no matter what side you're on, like people are
Right.
really frustrated, on both sides with how it all unfolded. And so you don't need extra distractions, especially during this time. So I completely
And
understand what you're
I
saying.
must mention that because of course, the trolls will say, "Oh, well, if it would have been the other way," and we would be having the exact same conversation for me. If you post it, even if you feel the other way, I'd have been like, "That's dumb." I don't know
Yeah.
what you gain by doing that when there are teammates who feel a different way. Simple as
Yeah,
that. And so
100%.
that's
E-
kind of a piece of it. And
e-
by the way, I'm glad we talked about it because if we see this team look different Saturday, think about that. If you see, like, we've talked about this a billion times. I was like, man, I'm loving how close this group is. I'm loving how tight knit they are. I'm loving how much they seem to like each other, and that's going to be and I hope that stays the same. And that decision which I find a little bit weird because it's just not needed. In that manner, hopefully it doesn't cause that distraction.
I trust that this team is
Mature
focused
enough.
and that Sark has them focused. And we've got an important game at home. We didn't mention this, but even if we don't win the SEC championship, if we get to the SEC championship and we lose that game, or we're an at-large bid, but we're the home team, that's another game at DKR that we need to be ready to play a very competent football team, a playoff football team. So I think it's important that we demonstrate that we dominate our own turf. Our one loss came at home this year. And we're playing a Florida Gators defense, Josh, that you mentioned is really savvy. And they're going to draw up things on offense that could surprise us with
Nothing to lose.
With this, right. They're going to play scrappy.
Yeah.
They're going to try everything. They're going to test us. And I think it's really important for our team's confidence that, we aim to cover that 21.5 point spread, which is a large margin.
They need it.
That's hefty. But we're at home, and
it's a
we gotta
large
do
margin after they just took freaking Georgia to the end. So it's funny we keep having these, and then if we win by 14, they're like, "Well, we don't know. Texas is dropping the ranking." I'm like, "No, quit! This is crazy. Have they not been paying attention?" I think anything more than a 10-point spread is a little no. Now, if you're the other SEC teams playing, Joe Blow down the street, then that's a different conversation. But when you're playing a conference team, why give that large of a spread when it's been all over the place?
That's just great bullet board material for them. I mean,
yeah,
I just think
I
that
get it. It's because of the quarterback. I understand. If it was Lagway, it would be like 11.5 points or something like that.
No, I don't think so. I think it'd still be in that. I still think it'd be double digit. I think it'd be 2 touchdowns. I think that we keep getting these spreads because I think that I have to believe that Vegas is telling us that sooner or later this Texas team, we are a sleeping giant. That one day and one game, we are going to see the team that we all know to be, hey, yo, that's the number one squad. Because it is wide open. We played the worst possible half we could have ever played against the Georgia Bulldogs. If we played like we did in the second half and the first half, we're probably the number one seed still.
Yeah.
You're
not wrong.
No one has done anything to blow anyone out of the water. Nobody. Ohio State, yeah, they're great. They played Nebraska and Michigan State tighter than Indiana did. So is Indiana by common opponent? Are they the best team? Their coach is electric. Their quarterback's fun, but we don't know anything. And I think Vegas giving us that hefty line, yes, it is absolutely bullet board material for the Florida Gators. They have nothing to lose. I'm with you on both those points. I do think they think that we are a sleeping giant, and we could come into a situation where we play a full game of football on every facet, special teams, because we've seen sparks across the board. We've seen how good we could be on defense, the best in the nation. We've seen how good we could be on special teams. Who is a more fearless punt returner than Silas Dan Bolden? Nobody. We've seen as good as we could be on offense when Quinn is dialed in and focused and healthy. Imagine, but we've never seen almost all of those things work in one single game this year together. Imagine if, maybe other than Michigan, imagine if that starts to happen. That 21.5 is easily doable, especially when that quarterback is not playing. Yes, if he's playing, it's definitely lesser. He's their starting quarterback, and he's really damn good. He's a 5-star top recruit, and he's playing like that. But with the quarterback play in tow, I think they know we're going to go in and try to smack them and make a massive statement, because we have to take care of home turf. Because the way it's looking right now, we are going to host a playoff game at DKR. And the last time we hosted a massive game under the lights in DKR, we blew it. We had pocket aces and we folded. So this team has to come out and they have to cover that, because we can if we're playing our best football, and we need to start taking care of our own turf, like you're saying, Toss, and making these things happen. Because if we don't win the SEC championship, but we get there, we're still going to be an at-large bid. There's a shot that we have a game at home.
This is like a minute thing, but it also helps crowd environment, and it keeps that Texas Longhorn crowd excited and ready to go. If you leave the last time at DKR knowing that you had that feeling of getting all three phases, operating at the capacity that you just talked about, Josh, then the anticipation will build. If we go take care of business on the road and we go win in Fayetteville and also at Kyle Field, then we'll be even more hyped. Of course, we'll be watching from the couch. But then by the time that those fans get back to DKR, they're going to blow the roof off. There is no roof, but they're going to blow the invisible roof off the place. So it all feeds in, and I think it starts here. Like, it's almost like the real season starts now. We come back from the bye, we're reset. We got that week of rest that we needed. Hopefully the guys that were hurt are less hurt than they were, right? Because they're still injured, like you said, Quan, in some capacity. They're not 100% health like they were at the beginning of the
Hopefully
season.
they're playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hope that, you know what, if the sorry to cut you, T, but if they come in and let's say the Quinn's post was an issue, I hope that we're right that this team is tight enough where they could come into Quinn and have the conversations that you guys had, Quan, when you were playing.
Well, the beauty is this, and you can't necessarily take this negative because no one should go in there and be like, "Hey, man, my bad." No. I mean, ultimately, you feel that way. That's fine, but you should go in there and go, "Hey, man, my bad. I was, I know not everybody feel the same as me, and I'm the quarterback. I'm one of the captains. I should think about that, big picture, and then." In my opinion, because to y'all point, we again, I've lived in Texas my whole life. I know what Texas is. You'd be crazy not to at least know, and then you move on because they all do have goals and they all want to play hard together and accomplish those goals. And so I'm with you between the combination of Sark and their leadership and the leaders that to always talk about on that team. I think they'll get past it and I just really, for him, I just hope he kind of learns from it. And leadership sometimes, believe me, I come in his office all the time. There's things I want to say or do, but respectfully, because there's a lot of different people, a lot of different perspectives and all the above on here, it's what value does it gain, right? And so
Yeah,
football being the ultimate team sport, as a leader, you just got to keep that in mind. And let's be real. From a fan base standpoint, that's a whole nother piece. There's going to be some fans who give them an NIL deal for doing it. And then there's going to be some fans who now might call for Arch Manning the second he has an incompletion. And it's just that level stuff, that home field advantage and energy and togetherness and family perspective that we had. I just get annoyed when it's so fun. It's so cool. The home games have been great. I don't want stuff that didn't really have real game experience value to cut into that. And so
I think
that's very well said.
That's a great way to say it. So from the game though, we'll start with you, Toss, go you, Q, with Nick, and then I'll pick up the scraps.
Why don't you kick us off, dude? Yeah,
you go for it. We can't do that.
I think you're positioning yourself like at the end like it's the worst thing in the world, but actually you get to hear everything we say, synthesize it, and then come up with the best little nugget. So I almost you're poo-pooing your position in how we go about this. I'm just saying.
Okay. I'll go first. I'll start on the defensive side of the football. I think I touched upon it last week, and I'll continue to go on it again. Two guys I want to really continue to highlight that I think are playing well, that are just not getting the quote unquote, name brand stats and filling up the stat sheet the way that we see in the like truncated ESPN box score. Barron Sorrell and Trey Moore. And I want to highlight those guys because I think they're close to highlighting those stats and they're doing all the right things. We just got to see those guys finish the job in this game. And if this quarterback, shout out to him and he's getting his time to shine from Yale. And hopefully this isn't some kind of Cinderella story that we're about to be a part of, like Jeremy Lin style. This is the time to take advantage and pick that momentum up. Because I think that's a thing that we're kind of discussing as one of the underlying themes of the show, really, for this team, is get that momentum. Because you're right, Toss, the season does kind of start now. Like, this is when it gets hot. November football, December football, like this is when it really counts. Nick's favorite team is the Chargers. No one got hotter than Phillip Rivers this time of year. Like, he used to come into November, December, and then bam, it hit and it just clicked for him. Like, get that mentality. Didn't go into January, but it definitely worked for November and December. Get that mentality. Get that, Tom Brady, baby. Get that mentality going and make this part of the season count and pick up that momentum. And that goes to the defensive side of the football too, because you are the highest graded defense and you are potentially the number one defense. and you still haven't hit that final gear yet. And that final gear is those guys like Barron Sorrell and Trey Moore finishing the job in the backfield. So those are two guys I want to highlight on defense. And then on offense, I think, we're going to probably all talk about this in some capacity. You were billed as the top unit in college football for the first 5 weeks, had a couple shaky weeks as we got into SEC play. You've had now some time to get acclimated, some time to rest out, including Kelvin Banks. The offensive line now is the time to shore up and get right. No penalties, no foolish plays, no making our offense be 2nd and 20 when we should be 2nd and 5 or 2nd and 4. So really shoring up the offense and the penalties on the offensive line, I think for me is something I would like to see in this Florida game.
Nice.
Now we could go toss Q, Nick.
Oh, you last, Nick.
Great spot to be in, Nick. Great spot to be in.
Apparently the best.
Makuba and Bond, we talked about from a health standpoint. I'll stick with one of those guys for my offensive player, Bond, who we've talked about, blowing the top off of the defense, stretching it up the seam with the deep ball, or at least the opportunity and the ability for us to have that look offensively from a schematic standpoint for Quinn is really important. And if we want to demonstrate a game where we dominate all 3 phases, I think it's crucial for him to be out there and him to be a threat. And it doesn't mean that he has to have a 60-yard catch for a touchdown or else he's not fulfilling that. But I would like to see a game where, the bubble screen is working and opening things up to a deep ball, right? Where we fake the bubble screen and we throw it up the field like we did earlier this season. I think I pointed it out after in the Michigan game because it was operated and executed perfectly. So starts with Bond being healthy, being back, being out there. And that'll help everything else for Quinn. And then on the defensive side, so many different guys. I like the call outs for both those edge rushers that you mentioned, Josh, but I'd still like our dominant edge rushers to really wreak havoc. And it's Simmons. Keep doing what you've been doing, but further cement yourself your first season as a Longhorn and in the SEC as a dominant force for years to come. So I'd love to see him get after the quarterback, maybe force a fumble back there, a strip sack or something like that. So Simmons, and I won't say Anthony Hill because maybe one of the two of Quan or Nick will mention him.
Yeah, no, mine's actually going to be a little bit different. Mine's going to be offense and offense. And what I mean by that from a complementary football standpoint, offense, take care of the football. Defense only gives up touchdowns when they get the ball at the 25 or the 20 or the 30. So if we take care of the football from an offensive standpoint, especially playing a Florida who's banged up and on their 3rd quarterback, I think our defense will be fine. All the guys y'all are talking about, they've been balling all year. They're the number 1 defense in the country. Put them on the other side of the 50, and teams aren't scoring from that side of the ball. And so first, from a defensive standpoint, it's complementary football. Offense, take care of the freaking ball. And that's running backs, quarterbacks, receivers, you name it. O-line, getting behind the chains, punter, punt the dang ball, don't average 26 yards a punt. So our offense is our defense's worst enemy so far, but our defense still held their own and did very good. From an offense standpoint, I'm going to switch it up. I know I said someone different last year, but I'm going to go with Gunnar Helm. And I'm going to tell you why, because he is Quinn's safety net. And that dude just balls. Every time he gets a target, I think it's like 90+% that he catches it. And what that'll also do is keep him ahead of the chains. Keep them ahead of the chains. You go score points. That defense keeps stopping them. Florida's on their 3rd quarterback, and they're not, a team very similar to what we saw in Vandy, even though they had the late touchdown. Vandy's a team that wants to manage the game, have a low-scoring game. Both defenses ball out, and they have a chance at the end. If you get up by 14, 20, 14, 17, 21, I just don't see their 3rd quarterback having it about them, especially going back to that defense, especially against our defense, to make a 3-touchdown comeback. And so mine, yes, it's defense, but it's on a complementary standpoint. Offense, take care of the ball, drive or punt, whatever you need to do, get good, win the field position battle, and then offensively, we stay ahead of the chains, we get points, Florida's going to be in big trouble.
Yeah, before you go, Nick, maybe a kind of a commoner question for you, Q, and mix of both. I feel like when they're starting in our half of the field, the offense can get the opposing offense can get way more lax and way less conservative because you're pretty much always close to scoring position. You could try different things. You could
Oh,
let
the
you could fly off.
entire playbook is open. And quite
Yeah.
frankly, a touchdown is what everybody wants, but it's icing on the cake. When you have to get 12 yards and you're in field goal range, I mean, your quarterback turns into freaking Michael Vick, your receivers turn into everybody, and then your defense is pissed off because they just got off the field. They're trying to go over what you did on them last time. So there's so many levels to it that yes, it just I mean, how many times did that happen? Our offense, they get the ball on 30 and it's 3rd and 6, and then they make a play. It's just you open up the entire playbook just by that position. So, and those are the majority of the touchdowns we've seen on this really, really good defense. So, if we could take care of the ball on that side of the field, or in general, and limit the turnovers that we've had, we talk about Beck having them, but we've had our fair share as well. If we take care of the ball, I think you add the people saying we're barely winning. You knock down 2, 3, 4 turnovers. Next thing you know, you're beating them by 3 touchdowns. And so just that complementary football perspective is what I feel like will really help the defense, and the defense keep doing what the heck they're doing because they're number one.
Yeah, and take it a step further, you say that obviously ending with a touchdown's nice, ending with going 12 yards for field goal is nice, but this happened a couple of times in the Georgia game. They turned the ball over in our territory. So it doesn't hurt as bad, where we have to drive the distance of the field. It's almost like a punt that pins you deep. So, I mean, it's just the exact same thing where it's like nothing. It can go wrong in that territory, but it can't go as poorly as it would if you were backed up. So, essentially that's the mindset there. I think for me, like, I'm not going to really even highlight players. I think the thing that frustrated me last week, I'm sure frustrated everyone, is just taking yards off the board because of stupid penalties. Clean it up. You've had a week, to figure stuff out. Had a week to rest up, to focus. Clean it up. Sound blocking, sound assignments. Just make sure that everyone is doing the right thing. No stupid targeting calls. No stupid unnecessary roughness calls that get you ejected. No dumb holding calls, face masks. Like, just play your style of game. I mean, look, they say this all the time about inferior opponents, right? A 4-4 Florida team plays with nothing to lose. They're going to try to get under your skin. They're going to try to figure out ways to make you, mess up and commit penalties, right? They'll be talking for sure. I mean, that's what happens when crappy teams play against good teams. They look for any competitive edge they can get. And so you can't let that get to you, obviously. And I know that majority of our penalties that we had were holding calls that were wiping off 20-yard runs, but like, regardless, it's a mindset. And so there was nothing more deflating about, the game in Vanderbilt than wiping off 20-yard first down runs and backing us up 1st and 20. So that's the number one thing for me on offense. And then on defense, just continue to play your style of ball. I mean, I don't think you need to get too fancy with it. Like, it's been working, everything has been pretty good. I mean, the pressure's been there. We've been getting turnovers, like our tackling, I think, took a slight step back against Vanderbilt, but I think because Pavia is super elusive and I think their running back is talented too. So if anything, maybe tighten up the tackling, against this Florida team. Like, they're going to rely on you to make mistakes. So like, missed tackles will work to their advantage, obviously. And so every little thing just needs to be tightened up a little bit more. You need to crank up that intensity. I mean, it's really such a cliche term, but just like the all gas, no brakes mentality needs to be there. It's time to put the foot on the gas, and like, we're hitting the toll road now. We're going 75 miles an hour. Like, we can crank it up to 80, like.
Oh, no. Toll Road's 85, baby. You
Is
get
it?
certain parts of it. It's 85.
Okay, well, there you go.
You're driving like me, dude. You're driving soft out there.
No. If it's 85, then you go 93.
Exactly. It's
But
time to
no,
crank
bro,
it up,
hey,
right?
Nick, you made such a good point, dude. And I think that's it too. There's a lot of analogies you can use for what time it is. But if you go back to the Georgia game, you go back to the that's awesome. You go back to the that happened to Shannon Sharp. His dog tried to come in. You go back to the Georgia game. You go back to the Washington game in the playoff,
A little different.
and play with an edge. I think that's been everybody's doubt. You saw it a little bit in Michigan, but even the other games, we found a way to win because we're that good. But I don't know that I've seen that edge consistently on offense. our defense plays with one hell of an edge. It is awesome. It's why you get goosebumps watching them and you're fired up and you're never out of the game because of them. But I think from an offensive standpoint, yeah, all gas, no brakes. Nah, it missing brakes. So how about we get our edge and put that, as they say, what, pedal to the metal?
Yeah, I think that is the age-old saying. But that kind of goes with what Toss was saying. I feel like keeping that playbook open, right? That's kind of what you were calling for, T, is like making sure that playbook is still open and we're getting our playmakers.
And that falls in line with what Nick's saying too, because the minute you get that holding call on 1st and 10, guess what? You're likely not going to run the football now on 1st and 25 or whatever it ends up being, 1st and 17. Like that, and it's a necessity of our system and scheme to run the football, at least to get those 3 to 5. And that just opens things up for us. And I feel that even still, people believe that's our Achilles heel of this team because of the injuries that we've been dealt. They don't like mentioning the injuries, but they say we can't run the ball well, right? And I think that it's going to be crucial. And Gunner's a crucial part of that as well, right? That hit him for 4 yards across the middle of the field just for an easy first down conversion or whatever it is on first down, that effective and efficient 4 to 6 yards that we can get. And then all of a sudden we're 3rd and 1, right? Because we pick up another 5. We're 3rd and 1, and now we can run that deep ball if we need to because we know we can convert fourth and 1.
I was literally thinking
right,
that
like
the top,
yeah. So just keeping the playbook open as much as possible, limiting the mistakes, like Nick's saying. I would love for our defense. They've been so good this year. We get the ball first, we receive, we go on an 8-minute scoring drive, then they get the ball. They throw one deep. They throw They throw one deep pass. Stay with me here. They throw one deep pass. Our DB tips it to them. They get lucky in like a 60-yard completion. They're on our own 25. Next play, they throw a pick. Then our offense runs another 8-minute drive, and our defense has only been out on the field for 2 minutes.
Who the hell are we, Bandy now?
I'm just saying, man. Like give these guys a break. Like they've been so good and they've done so much for our team thus far. Like let's run
3 and out's a good break too. I mean, 3 and out, and they punt it 60 yards, and then
mine's not as exciting as Toss's Hollywood vision of this game.
Yeah, and then the
listen. I don't care what the vision is as long as we win.
Then the 3rd string quarterback who was at Yale, he gets one completion, and then he has maybe 5 more the rest of the game. But the one at the beginning, he feels heroic, and then it's all crumbling from there for him. But our defense deserves a game where the time of possession battle, we double what Florida does. Yeah. They deserve that because they've carried us thus far, in my opinion.
And we could do that if Quinn is in a position where he's picking people apart 4 yards, 3 yards, 5 yards, 7 yards, 8 yards, 10 yards, like just like really like systematically.
Was it the ULM, the first drive in the ULM game, right? Isn't that
kind of like parts in the Vandy game too? Screen, 4 yards, 5 yards, screen, like just kind of like getting, and then you hit DeAndre Moore, who's a baller. No one shouted him out, but he's a beast. So then you hit him on that deep all over the top. Nick will go you, Q, Toss, me. We'll close it out like this as we always do. Give me some numbers, Nick.
I am going to go 48 to 13. The Longhorns, of course.
Imagine if he's like Gators. That'd be hilarious. Toss.
I'm gonna go with 38-13. I'm keeping the same number for them points wise. I think they're just gonna struggle to score points. And I was in my head at 31, but I want our defense to score a touchdown in this game, and that's why I bumped it up to 38. Although if you're looking at it from my earlier point, defense gets a pick 6 or strip sack for a return for a touchdown, then they have to go right back out on the field. So I kind of don't like that this game. But I'm 38-13.
Okay, Q.
I'm going to go 31-10.
So covering on the dot.
Yeah.
I'm going to go 35-7. I think this is it. I think the defense shows up. The complimentary football, everything we ask for is there. Vegas could finally take a deep breath and relax that we cover, and then we go and we dominate. We have a great game.
Yes,
We're back on track. All right, fellas. Fisher DeSopoulos, DJ Nikki, Snacks Credit, the Quan Cosby. We will see you guys later, or we'll see you another time. Hook 'em.
Hook 'em. All it takes is one